Welcome to the latest edition of Composer to Composer. My name's Dale Cornelius, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Brontë Horder and Pru Montin to this series. Pru and Brontë are interviewing one another, and they're talking about collaborations with each other as well as their own individual projects. Now, Brontë has been twice nominated for Best Song for the Screen at the APRA Screen Music Awards, and Pru has been recognised as a composer to watch by ASCAP, as well as collaborating with Hollywood composers such as Cliff Martinez, Michael A. Levin and Adam Peters. I think this is going to be a great interview. Pru and Brontë are talking about lots of different things, including the process of writing songs for the screen, but also how to make music out of an inanimate object like a chair. It's really interesting stuff. Hope you enjoy it.
Thanks AGSC for inviting Brontë and I to have a chat to you today. We're pretty excited because we've been fortunate enough to actually collaborate together, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and then our individual styles through a project that we pitched for. My background's a little bit more in musical sound design and sculpting and crafting sound, and Brontë is an amazing singer-songwriter, so we got to meld our two worlds together on this project. And then later on we're going to talk a little bit more about how we work individually. So before I play the clip, Brontë, do you want to introduce our collaboration?
Yes, so Pru and I were put together on day one of Song Hubs, which was APRA's first Songs for Screen writing camp in LA. And I walked in with a voice memo of a lullaby because we'd been given the short film maybe 24 hours before to have a look at. And I like to be prepared, so I came in.
And I don't. I like to wing it.
I like to have something as a jumping off point. So I brought that in and I played it to Pru, and she was like, yeah, let's do this. And through her musical direction of how to sing the song, and she just really knows how to manipulate sound. So it's a great example of our two styles coming together, because you've got the song itself, and then you've got this like interesting soundscape that Pru created around it.
Yeah, we'll play it, and we called it See the Sky. So this is just an excerpt from our credits. So after the whole film developed, and we scored this in a day, 7 minutes worth. So this is the final section. Close your eyes and see the sky. Turn your face towards the light. Hush, my darling, it'll be alright. What I loved about that collaboration was, so we had been given the short film to watch, and you came in with the idea of watching the film that you wanted a lullaby to be present. And I mean, we haven't shown the rest of the score, but basically we recorded you singing that lullaby so many times, and I just kept slowing you down and slowing you down and just just to really elongated that lullaby, and then we manipulated your voice for the entire 7 minutes of the score. It didn't sound like voice by the end of what we'd done, but it was a theme that we both resonated with within the film. So just wanted to see how we could develop that. So when we got to the credits, it's the first time we got to actually sing the entire lullaby. Yeah, it's just the ethereal kind of ephemeral aspect of playing against the pitches that we both drew to, but responded very in different ways. So that's what I love about that collaboration. And I mean, I work very much with sound gestures, and try and sculpt with what I'm given. So I really like having a concrete aspect to work with, some kind of found sound. And you came with the gestures and just improvised over the top as well.
It was very cool to watch how you work, just how you manipulate my voice. And as you were saying earlier, the first, 5 or so minutes of the film is still my voice, but you wouldn't know it because you just put it through 11 different processes. And it was fascinating to watch. It's amazing how you craft sound like that.
I'm really fascinated because I don't come from a word kind of lyrical background. I came to music or film music very much from not being able to write lyrics. So I figured, I've got the dialogue. That's my story, that's set up, I'll accompany that. But you came to film music from a very different standpoint. You're a bona fide singer-songwriter. Worked in LA and you're in New York for a period as well, right?
Yeah. So I came from music from, as you're saying, a songwriting element. I grew up singing and I learnt to play the piano when I was a kid, and I remember being taught how to form a chord, and then I was off and running, writing songs. I was probably about 10. And just from there, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to build my life around music. And how that would look like, I wasn't really sure. So I just kind of followed all the different opportunities that were presented to me. And I feel like that's what's led me here, just saying yes to things and ending up where I am now. Kind of putting yourself in the place where you think, opportunities are going to come to you. So, for example, I want to be a songwriter, so I moved to LA, and I was in New York for a while because I was like, well, that's where the songwriters are, so I should be there. And if I'm around people that are better than me, then I'll get better. And I believe that. I think that you should always surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. And that'll lift you up. A rising tide lifts all boats. And then from there, from pitching songs to music supervisors, because I was in this situation in LA where I moved on a J1 working holiday visa, and I worked in a bar every night to pay my rent, and during the day I would go to a studio and I'd write 1 to 2 songs with different people every day. And so it was like a year-long writing camp, which was great because I really got to hone my craft. And it was in that year that I realized I would like to produce as well, because I was getting frustrated constantly waiting for the mixes to be sent to me from the producer. And I thought, I should learn how to do that. And I was also so fascinated with all the elements of sound. And I should say that it was pop music primarily that I was writing. So, earworms, the ear candy of a guitar part, or I just loved all those elements. So I wanted to be part of creating that, not just the song, the music and the lyrics, but all the sounds around that. I wanted to do that as well. And then through that, I then, connected all the dots very slowly over years, realized that I'd always loved film and TV music, and I'd always really noticed it and paid attention, but I just wasn't exposed to the industry in the way of knowing all the jobs that people can have. I really just thought that it was like Hans Zimmer and John Williams and like no one in between. But there's so many people writing music for a living. And once I realized that was available to me, I started to pursue that and enrolled again. I was like, well, if I want to be part of film, I need to go where the filmmakers are, and they're at film school. So I enrolled at film school at Afters, and I did a year there, and that was the same time that I reached out to the DA's office. And yeah.
Sorry, the DA's office, just for those unaware, is a composer collective?
Yes. A bespoke composition house specialising in music for the screen, and it's owned by Dinesh Wicks and Adam Gok. I reached out to them, and they have mentored me for years. It kind of started off like a weekly boot camp where they would give me a brief and I'd have to write a track and pitch it back to them, and that was amazing experience because it made my production chops, like I had to, ramp that up really quickly. It's a steep learning curve. And then also, using words to describe, pitch your music to, which we have to do so often, to producers or directors or whoever. And even after you've got the job, you want to be able to describe, why is this a good piece of music? Why is it a good fit for the project? So yeah, they've really helped me hone my craft in that sense as well. So now I work full time with them, which is awesome. And we just get to work on so many projects and we have the most fun. I love to collaborate, which I think kind of comes from the songwriting background. I love working with other people. I just think it's so fun.
I want to introduce an excerpt from your work on the short film 14, which you were nominated for the 2019 Original Song, Best Song for Film, for the Australian Guild of Screen Composers APRA AMCOS Screen Music Awards. Let's play this excerpt, which is you in both underscore and songwriting form.
Yeah. Just before I play this clip, I just want to issue a trigger warning. It's depicting domestic violence and sexual assault, so feel free to skip over this part.
Please don't leave me.
Day by day, year by year, I find myself falling more in love with you. Day by day, year by year, ooh, impossible. My life without you would be impossible. I promise you that I will be always yours forevermore. Day by day, year by year, I find myself day by day.
What's striking about that scene and the song is the lyrics. Day by day, impossible to live without you, and year by year. So I really would love to know a bit more about how the song came together. How was it working, writing for the film? Were you given lyrics and just the meaning behind the words?
Yes. So for this short film 14, which is actually Rowena's, so Rowena Rasmussen is the writer and director, and it's her final culmination project for the end of the year. at Afters. So it's an Afters film. And she had said, you know, this is the story that I want to work with. And I just kind of gravitated to it immediately because she said that she wanted to have a song. And I was like, I would love to write a song for this. I think it could be really powerful. And it was her idea to have the, you know, Frank Sinatra waltz love song to juxtapose, you know, what's happening on screen, which is, you know, obviously a horrible situation. And so once she had given me the script and we had a conversation about that, I kind of went off and just started, you know, working on different ideas. And I showed up on set when they were filming and I pulled her aside and I just kind of sung to her just what I had, which was not much. It was just like, you know, the day by day, year by year, like the first couple of lines. And she just said, yes, that's perfect, go with it. And so then I just kind of went away and I did the rest of the track and yeah, just put all the elements together. And then when I got the pictures, I could form the structure and kind of, I think verse 2, I wrote like the impossible to live, you know, without you. For the pictures, actually, that lyric kind of came from that because I had the first verse, well, which is kind of the chorus. And then, yeah, a bit more came as I saw the pictures, but most of the song was written before I saw anything.
So it's a real symbiotic kind of relationship. So there's lots of, so you're writing throughout the entire process and tweaking and refining.
Yeah, and I prefer getting, like with Song Hubs, like I came in with an idea. I like to really get ahead of it as soon as I can write something. And I think the earlier the better because people are really open and they don't quite know what they want yet and they haven't had time to get attached to temp music and they haven't had time to, think too much about it. So I like to get in early and write music when it's a lot more about the exploration.
It's fascinating that you say you like to get in early, and we've had this conversation before because I work very much from the opposite way. I need the visuals to respond to, and I respond to sound. So I guess my background is from, I guess you could say I have an undergraduate in computer music. So I spent many years responding to beeps, bleeps, and blops in a live environment. So whatever the computer spat out at us, because I'm post kind of tape years, we would, we were an ensemble at university. It was an ensemble called Sonic Art, and we'd be improvising to computer algorithms. And then really...
So ahead of your time.
Pardon?
You're so ahead of your time, like with AI and, people writing with artificial intelligence and computer algorithms. And you're doing it
that was a lot of what we were doing. So, and we had visuals at the same time. So the computer was also spitting out algorithms for visuals. So we were putting on performances that had to take an audience on a journey, not freak them out. We had to kind of, because bleeps and blops can be a little bit disconnected. So we had to add some warmth and really just respond to each other. So it was almost like doing jazz with my, with a computer. And at the same time, also, I guess I have my favorite musical genre is indeterminate and chance operated music. So whilst everyone else is studying orchestration, even though I wanted very much to be a film composer, I was reading things like Death of the Author by Roland Barthes, who said there is to have the death of the author, so to cut our ego out of it as a composer, which might have had a little kind of a collapse when I read that, going, was ego killed? But at the death of the author is the birth of the reader. So So for me, film is an open-ended interpretation of a story, and because it's such a collaborative art as well, the cinematographer is going to have an idea of what they bring to the story, the director, the writer, the editor, and then we're the last ones that come on board and get to kind of add that one extra layer that might not have been discovered yet. So yeah, but this indeterminate chance-operated music, so people like John Cage and John Adams being my absolute favourite. It's, you kind of take a step back as a composer and put a lot of more emphasis on the performer. You can take that further and give a lot more space to the listener. So it's kind of, and even if you think about orchestral music, whatever I write, the dots that I put on the page is interpreted by a performer who is then, who has their own experiences with how they translate those dots. Then you've got the conductor who, again, with their background is trying to direct a performer in their idea of the piece. And then, you know, several layers down the line, then an audience is going, oh, I really respond to, you know, that note you played in the second. And you know.
That's so fascinating. So yeah, can you talk more about your journey through music concrete and how that led to you working on films?
I don't have a lot of gear, and I didn't have a lot of resources coming into film. The first films I ever scored were trying to, I had a flautist in a stairwell at this stairwell and just kind of recording those sounds and taking them, because, I mean, it was that or it was using Sibelius to write in notes. Samples are a lot better these days, but they're expensive. So beforehand, I had been fortunate enough to be taught kind of how to manipulate sound and explore in Pro Tools and Digital Performer, just taking sounds, manipulating, splicing it together. So I didn't need to have performers. I could respond to samples that I'd collected. Yeah. So one of my favorite pieces, which was lucky enough to kind of get the attention of some LA-based composers, which led to me being able to, I spent a lot of time in LA, I guess, creating sounds and textures and adding to composers' work. My favorite piece, this piece, is, it's a chair. The only music that you hear is all created from a very interesting chair when I had a spare moment in the studio. We had an extra 10 minutes. You never let those 10 minutes of studio time go to waste. And I was just sitting back on this chair, and it was like, it had this real, it was an amazing sound. And everyone's like, what are you going to do with that? You know, can't do anything with that. It's just a squeak. So I figured I'd prove everyone wrong and try and make some art out of the chair. And so kind of to talk through the process, every sound has its own kind of organic shape and its essence. So I'll play this piece, but it's only from, it's 2 to 3 seconds of one sample, and then it's only using EQ, time shift, noise gates, and reverb. That's the only processing that's been done in the piece. So I'll play that.
Amazing. Suspense is building. Wow, that was so cool. One chair.
I get a lot of questions from up and comers about, how do you, if you get stuck for an idea, how do you navigate? You don't have the latest samples, can't afford the gear. So I always come back to that because I had the most fun creating that, and it was a joke. It was just to see. There's no pitch material in that. It's just to see how far you can take one idea. And I always say everything comes back to a concept. And we'll explore that, how to approach that in a feature film, say. But it comes back to the concept. So if you've got a really strong idea, it doesn't matter what you use to create that. That, because that was a chair and that's all that I used. That was
It's amazing.
It was a
what do you think is your top plugin that you use? EQ? What's the thing you use the most?
A microphone.
But I mean, when you're manipulating sound, what's the first treatment?
It depends on the sound. So that's because I sit and just try everything. So I'll start with the sound, listen to it, and then probably, reverb's really important to kind of create a space. And then you kind of start to see when you're adding the reverb kind of a larger shape, I guess, perhaps a distorted perhaps shape of what the original is. And I love delay, but anyway, it's so you just kind of, for me, I'll start with the sound and I'll just treat it, see what it sounds like faster, slower, and then just start layering and finding, I'll end up with 20, 40 different versions of the one sound and then piecing that together and then sculpting around that. I love minimalism. It's just one tiny sound and exploring the depths of that. That was one microphone that was upside down. It wasn't even pointing at the chair. We just happened to kind of... So the sound quality isn't necessarily as good, but again, I think that a concept, you can carry a concept longer than you can expensive equipment. Because the other side of the coin, if you're not using all the expensive and latest sample libraries or you're not attached to any particular gear, then you're free to kind of create a sound that no one else is using. And I can guarantee no one's using a chair. So I get to explore what sounds are important to other composers, and they'll throw me, I like this, send me a whole bunch of layers that I can add to my work that will not sound like Omnisphere, that won't, even though everything is tweakable, everything has you can still kind of discover what the source is, and sometimes it's fun to leave a bit of mystery in there and not disclose too much. So then give it its own charm.
And I think that's so important today, especially, that message that you don't need all the fancy gear and the fancy plugins and, I was working off the, what's it called? The Focusrite, red interface box, until recently. It was doing the job. You've still got it. I only recently upgraded, to a duet. And I think, you know, you earn those upgrades, and it's not about that. Like, it's important to know that you've got all the tools you need. I use Logic presets all the time, and the EQ within Logic, like all those sounds, they do a great job, and you can do so much with it. And I think it's really important to try and create your own samples and your own sounds like you do, because that's how you create a unique voice, and your music does sound different. And that's part of what I've been doing in the last couple of years, has also been, like you were doing, using my voice in scores and in music, but it might not be recognizable as my voice, just to give it a different sound. It's something that no one else has access to. So you need try and find, your chair or your voice or whatever unique thing that you have that you can manipulate and use, to create a unique sound. So tell me, how did you approach a feature film, that big beast of a project?
Yeah, so I recently scored the Australian indie called Moonrock for Monday. I spent a lot of time kind of peeling back the layers of the story, and because I like to sculpt, I wanted to sculpt sound. I wanted to kind of come up with an arsenal, I guess, of building blocks that I could kind of paint throughout the film. So Moonrock for Monday, it's kind of a spiritual journey of an 8-year-old, which is a very, so there had to be lots of joy. It had to be light, but it also had to be, I wanted to add a level of knowingness and time, past, present, future. And because Moonrock is in the title, and just kind of, it's a journey towards Uluru, which is Moonrock. I wanted to have an element of, I guess, liftoff for me is probably the best way. So rocket launching, kind of a playful countdown to kind of discovery, I guess, is a nice way of what I wanted to infuse into the film. So peppered throughout the score is these constant lifts of these liftoffs. So I thought I might play a couple of those
Yes, please
clips.
What you did for that, particularly the vocal being a cooey. It's very Australian.
It came about through an improvisation. So I work a lot with going back into, I like working with performers and kind of sampling. So if I can collect sounds and then infer kind of meaning, I guess, to those sounds. I have a great relationship with a jazz vocalist that I went to uni with, Katja Nichner. When I get an opportunity to get performers in, and a voice works really well for the story, which I felt it did for this. I asked Katja, I sent her a lot of melody to sing, and then asked her to then just improvise over. So I think she did 3-4 takes, and What I love about working with her is she has, because you get a performer to also give their idea. So again, it's that collaboration, right?
Yeah.
So she's watched the scene and she's got her own feeling, and she brings her gestures, and I really like working with musical gestures. And so she just improvised. So she, at the time, she was working on, she's got a Russian background. So she was working on folk Russian singing. And so I had like a, 2-minute improvisation of her responding to like the layers, the textures. So I gave her the textures that I wanted to work with, which was the lift-off stuff, the kind of lunar landscape, if you will, that I was playing around with. Had an idea of a melody that was a theme throughout the film that was representing the 8-year-old and the childlike melody. And yeah, she just riffed off of my ideas, and I think the cooey came from one of those, and I had to ask her to re-record it a couple of times, so I had alternate versions. Because it fitted so well. Like it's that collaboration. You don't always know what is going to come from it, but then something sticks. You throw lots of ideas at the film, which is why I work with the visuals and see what comes of it. So every time the camera pans up and it reaches its peak, then you get that wonderful, because we are in outback Australia, we've got those glorious panoramas, I guess. It was the tip of the lift off, the height of the journey each time. So it really went really well with my concept. Absolutely not planned that, but worked out really well.
And you told me you played the ukulele yourself, which is awesome.
Yeah, I don't play ukulele. I'm very good at music editing. I think I played 2 notes at a time and then had to kind of like shift. I don't know whether it would have been faster to have gotten a performer to play it and write down the dots, or if it was time consuming, but I really do like editing.
That's incredible.
I want to move on to your second best original song nomination that you received, which was This Past Year Gone. So that's 2 in a row.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
Congratulations. So this second nomination was you scored and wrote the original song for a documentary about the koala.
Bear Koala Hero. It's a documentary following kind of the aftermath of the bushfires from late 2019, early 2020, so last year. And Bear is a rescue dog that has learned how to find koalas through smell. And they use him as a tool to find koalas after bushfires, and then they can rescue those koalas, rehabilitate them, and then eventually release them back to the wild. Butter Media created this awesome documentary and reached out because they wanted to have music and also a song for the end titles. Worked with the DA's office on this documentary, and we wrote a song. It was so interesting to write a song in 2 different rooms, in 2 different continents. So it would be Dinesh and I in LA, we'd come up with some chords and melodies and lyrics and ideas, and then we'd shoot it over to Mitch and Adam in Sydney, and then the next day we'd wake up and we'd get ideas back. And it was just this constant conversation, and so exciting, as you would know, when you get ideas back from your collaborator, because it's like this, what have they done and what's it going to lead to? So I love working with other people because there's this element of trust and, it's the unknown, but you create something cool together. So yeah, we wrote this song, and we wanted to create a song that was uplifting and, because it is quite devastating, obviously, talking about the bushfires and the destruction and all these animals that perished in the fires. But then this was this, you know, ray of light, this story about a dog who's, you know, this beautiful little rescue dog, like running around the bush and finding koalas. And it's a story of hope. So the music, we wanted to make it also feel like coming home. The song's called Take Me Home.
Fuel and affection for these little Aussie treasures. We need animals like koalas, and future generations need them too.
We want to understand koala, we want to understand where they live, you know, their genetics, all those things, so we can preserve them.
Sun casts a shadow across your face.
It's one thing when you protect koala habitat, you protect the habitat from many other animals.
Hide scars and tears and hearts break.
Our mission in life is to try and understand what animals do, what they can and cannot do, how can they cope in the context of natural disaster and environmental change.
Are you the hero I need today?
By putting more detection dogs in the field, like our tireless superhero bear, our koala knowledge will improve, our conservation will improve, and words like extinction won't be needed when we're talking about koalas.
Take me home. Take me home. Through the darkness I can see your light coming closer, it keeps me alive. So tell me you're on your way. Oh, 4,000 footsteps in my door, between you and I, the fire rose, but you've never been afraid.
You know, goosebumps. I get shivers listening to that.
So nice.
It absolutely is uplifting, and I think it's the combination of kind of the wall of vocal sound and then the absolute hard silences with the reverb that just goes, here we are, silence, sitting. It's great. It's a great combination. I really...
Yeah, I think, you know, we wanted to keep it quite small, like, because we wanted it to be intimate, and so really it's, you know, acoustic guitar and piano, and that's it. Like, there's not much to it. There's strings and, you know, I stacked my vocals to give that kind of
stacking of
choir.
the vocals is...
Yeah, that's just me a lot of times. We debated hiring a choir, and I was like, oh, I'll just stack myself, you know. I'll just sing all the harmonies. But it gives that kind of, that small ensemble feel, which is intimate, and then combined with the melody kind of, because it's, you know, ascending, the way that it swells and it soars, that take me home, like it's going up, and I think it kind of pulls you in and makes you feel that feeling of going home, and there's a peacefulness to it.
I think that's a great moment to say...
To end our chat.
Yeah, as much
Peaceful.
as we could chat a lot longer.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Pru, and thank you, AGSC, for having us. We love to talk. We probably talk too much. Apologies to whoever edits this.
Good to chat, Bronte, and I've got your melody stuck in my head now. So
Bye.
I'm going to stop. Yeah, bye.